is where you're going to see my CPA flag fly here. Oftentimes we gloss over these terms, and I want to really spend a minute here because I think especially as women sometimes we hear things and we're exposed to things and it's moving really quickly and we don't always stop and say, hold on a minute, that doesn't make sense to me, or I have never been explained that concept. Please, let's do that now. So we're going to do that now. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It essentially means what the practice makes. So we are going to look at what your practice makes, and then we're going to use that as a way to value the practice for your partner to buy in. Whether or not, so let's dive into how to calculate EBITDA if you have not seen this before. So dental practices every business has unique things in calculating EBITDA, but let's spend a moment here walking through how we calculate EBITDA for dental practice. So practice collections if you use QuickBooks, you'll see this oftentimes as net revenue minus the overhead expenses for the practice equals the practice operating profit. Then we take out our associate compensation. We take out estimated reasonable owner compensation, and that gets us to our EBITDA number. For valuing your practice, we're going to take EBITDA and multiply that times 5, and that's going to be the value of the practice. I don't have time today to get into why 5 times EBITDA is the right price for your practice. We have actually a whole hour free resource on our website. If you want to go dive into why 5 times EBITDA is the right number, you can see that there. But I want to just take this home because I use some words here that can be hard to interpret. So I want to take this home with a quick example of what this actually looks like. So let's pretend we have a 2-doctor practice. We do $2.25 million in total collections. This includes our hygiene as well. We have about a 58% overhead rate. So that's $1.29 million in overhead expenses. You'll often hear this as 60% as a general average. 2-doctor practices do typically do a little bit better than average. So we gave that here at the 58 versus 60. That leads you to your operating profit of $955,000. Now let's talk about associate and reasonable owner comp for just a second. So you heard me say earlier that we pay associates and owners between 30 and 33% of production. Here we're also going to add in things like benefits, CE, etc., taxes, all the things that it costs to employ your associate. We are going to then take the same logic of what we're paying for our associate, and we're going to apply that to our owner as well. That's how we estimate our reasonable owner comp. As an owner of a practice, you are likely reimbursing yourself for more than you are the associate. That is not a bad thing. That is absolutely appropriate, but we don't want to overburden the practice with that expense. So what we're going to look at is we're going to say, okay, let's say we have an associate who we give them a $2,000 budget each year for CE. But let's say we run all of our CE through the practice as the owner. And let's say we did $8,000 worth of CE last year. We don't put that whole $8,000 in. We match our CE with what we did for the associate. So that'd be $2,000. Health insurance is another one. Let's say we're paying $250 a month towards our associate health insurance, but we're paying our entire premium. We're going to take that $250 as reasonable owner comp. So there's some math to be done here, and there's some things to look at, but we're going to match our associate with our owner. In this example, we have an owner who's producing slightly more than the associate, so there is a higher expense here. And typically that's the case. Typically owners outproduce associates. So that leads us to $380,000 in EBITDA, which is about 17%. We take that times 5, and that gets us to the $1.9 million practice value. Just to pause here for a second, you do hear a lot about percentage of collections as a way to value a practice. So we're going to talk about what that means and whether or not that would be a good idea or whether you should stick with EBITDA. But just to give you an idea, 17% EBITDA is going to be roughly about 85% of collections. Okay, so some notes on EBITDA. Percentage of collections versus EBITDA, I just mentioned before. So 15% EBITDA equates to 75% collections. EBITDA is superior to collections in that it rewards how profitable a practice is for the seller doc, or it protects the buyer doc if it's not profitable. So really important that we use EBITDA here so that we are accounting for how profitable the practice is. Another note, again, my CPA is showing here, but I just have to say it. EBITDA is a calculation that considers the practice to be debt-free. If the practice has debt, many do for equipment that they've purchased or even potentially the original purchase of the practice, etc., that is subtracted out from that equity value of the practice. Please note, you cannot go into QuickBooks and find your EBITDA number. It doesn't just sit there for you to pull. It's not just a report that you can run. You will have to do this calculation. When you do, please be sure that your overhead, so remember that happened at the top of our calculation, make sure that that does not include your owner expenses. If you look at your P&L and there is a separate section for doctor's expenses, that's a good sign that likely they're not buried in your overhead. If you look at your P&L and your accounts are showing up in alphabetical order, proceed with caution. That likely means that you could have owner's expenses mixed in with your overhead, and you just want to be sure you separate those out when you do this calculation for yourself. Last word of caution, if you are asking your CPA for this, they may be calculating it differently than how dental practices valuations are calculated. So just a word of caution there. If you do ask them for this, be sure you understand what they're using in each of the areas to create the EBITDA calculation so that if you need to tweak it based on what we just shared, that you're able to do that.